Hi book friends, I'm Erin, and this is Erin Go Read. Before Nonfiction November is over, I wanted to do a video of the 20 books. Before Nonfiction November is over, I wanted to do a video kind of to remind myself and to get some feedback from you about books that I'm most excited to get to. I have separated these into 4 separate categories. So one is kind of either memoir or someone else telling other people's stories. I have a section that's more kind of on particular topics, like specific topic, like writing or food or neurology. I have a more broad kind of historical category. And then I have a category more about business and books that I think that will help me in starting my own business. I'm going to start with the category that is kind of more specific topics. And the first one I think is a great addition. This is Oliver Sacks, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. And this is essentially tales of neurology, including a tale about a man who mistook his wife for a hat due to a neurological condition. The next is a book that I have actually read a bit and utilized already. And this is Barefoot Strong, Unlock the Secrets of Movement Longevity by Dr. Emily Splichal. And I listened to her on a podcast, and I can't remember which one. I listened to many health and wellness fitness podcasts, so one of those. And essentially, the idea is I became interested in this after I experienced a pretty long bout of plantar fasciitis. I'm a runner, and although my plantar fasciitis never got severe, like some people really experience it badly, there's this telltale sign when you first get out of bed in the morning and you go put weight on your foot and you get a sharp pain right in the instep of your foot. And kind of the acute remedy for that is to have a lot of support so that you're not stretching the bottom of your foot essentially and pushing weight on it. Rather, it's being supported like by the arch of a shoe, which is great for the initial inflammation to come down. But ultimately, in order to have a cure for it, you need to work on the structure of your foot. And when you think about how pretty much from the time we walk, we're wearing shoes. And imagine if you wore something as structured as a shoe on your hands, how incapable we would be of manipulating our hand and how disconnected we would be. And that's what we've done with our feet. And this is the foundation of our movement, our feet. And so this gives exercises and techniques to kind of accessing that again and reestablishing the connection to our feet. And the little bit that I've done from this has really helped me as far as running and even just walking and feeling more connection to my feet. I mean, it's amazing. Just try to isolate. Just lift up your big toe and put it down, and then lift up your other toes and put it down. And then can you do it like that with your toes? And it's really difficult to try to access that. But I mean, just like I can do it with my hand, you should be able to do that with your foot as well. But we can't because we're locking them up in shoes all the time and we don't have access to them. This next book is by Dr. Caroline Leaf. This is Switch On Your Brain. And so this basically is a book about, I know that Caroline Leaf is a Christian. I don't know that this is necessarily a Christian book. I think this is more of a scientific book that happens to be written by a Christian. And from what I understand, this is about basically the mind-body connection. And they're not two separate things. A good example of this is like the placebo effect is a real thing. In order for a scientific study to be what they call the gold standard, it has to be a double-blind study, meaning that you have to have a control group who receives a placebo. And they don't know that they've received a placebo, and the researcher doesn't know whether or not they've taken the actual drug or the placebo, because it has that much of an effect. There are studies where they've taken people with knee pain, basically made an incision as if they did a surgery, but they don't actually do any surgery, and those patients actually have really great outcomes. Just the placebo effect of being cut open, thinking that they've had knee surgery. So I think this is basically about how to utilize that then to our advantage. Next up, this is Joel Salatin's The Marvelous Pigness of Pigs, which I think is a great title. He's another one where I heard him on a podcast and I bought his book. And Joel Salatin is a Christian farmer, and it's essentially about humane, ethical treatment of animals that are going to be later, that will later become food, essentially. So I know there's a really big vegetarian movement right now. And while I appreciate the heart of those who don't want to harm animals, and we kind of have two opposite ends of the spectrum. We have the, never harm an animal, animals aren't food side, and then we have the side that says, okay, but animals were kind of put on this earth to be our food, and they're really good nourishment for us, but the commercially raised large-scale way that livestock is bred for human consumption is not good, and it's disgusting, and it's reprehensible. Can we bring these things closer together and raise animals for human consumption in a way that they have a wonderful life? The animals are taken care of and nurtured and given what they need to live a good life. Also providing a healthy animal that will then be consumed, which will then provide a healthy meat product for the consumer. So that's what this book is about, and that kind of is where I stand on that issue. And the next is Stephen King's On Writing. This is a memoir of the craft. I suppose this could have been in the memoir section. I don't think I had actually read that subtitle yet. But yeah, working on being a writer, on writing my own memoir, so why not learn from the king? All right, next, this stack is just closest to me, so I'm going to go with the kind of more businessy side. This is Donald Miller's Building a Storybrand, and this is just basically about how can you reach your consumers, how can you look at your potential consumers and find the way to get to them so that you can provide the product that you want to serve them with. And we have Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow. I recently read Blink by Malcolm Gladwell, which I believe I actually forgot to include in my, October, I think, wrap-up. But anyhow, I started listening to this on audiobook almost immediately after, and they're way too similar to each other. I've heard Daniel Kahneman's book referenced in many other books. I've heard his work referenced in many podcasts. And so this is a book I need a little bit more separation, I think, from Malcolm Gladwell's book, but it essentially gets to the fundamentals of how we think and why we think the way that we do. Not the things that we think, but the machinations of the process of thinking. And then we have Denise Duffield Thomas's Chillpreneur. The new rules for creating success, freedom, and abundance in your terms. And as I'm starting my own business, this was a book that had been recommended to me, so I want to check this out. This is a book that I still have the sticker on it from Barnes & Noble on the buy two get one free table they have. And I also saw that Olive at a Book Olive has read this, and this is The Butchering Art by Lindsey Fitzgerald. And this is essentially about like the history of surgery and how like barbers used to be surgeons, and Joseph Lister comes about and changes things about all germ theory comes in with Joseph Lister, and how things kind of change from there. We have this behemoth. This is Jill Lepore's These Truths, the History of the United States of America. I've read the introduction so far of this, and I know a lot of people are reading this one right now. I imagine that this one might be included in the BookTube Prize, the nonfiction section of the BookTube Prize, which I will be a judge for. So whether I get to this sooner or later, I probably will get to this. And it's a history of the United States. Next up, we have The Pioneers by David McCullough. David McCullough is a very well-known, highly respected nonfiction author. I've been recommended basically any of his books many times before, and this is about a particular section of the United States very early on. I think I read 1788, around that time, late 18th century, about a particular group of people and what they're able to do in settling the land. And there's kind of a unique mix of freedom of religion, universal education, and prohibition of slavery. And so from that foundation, they're pioneering this area of the land and creating their own little world. So this follows like 5 major players in that, and how that all comes to be. Next up is another really well-known nonfiction book, and this is I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara. And this is Michelle McNamara becomes really kind of obsessed with finding the Golden State Killer, who was a serial killer in California, in Northern California in particular, and right around the area where I've lived most of my life. So sadly, the Golden State Killer, she died before he was found, but actually crazy where he had been living for the last like 20 something years, where he'd kind of been inactive as a serial killer, was in the neighborhood right next to mine. So my aunt and uncle used to live right in the neighborhood where he was found when they caught him. And my sister and I took us 10 to 15 minutes to ride there on our bikes. And we would, call my aunt, okay, we're on our way. We would ride over there. There was just one 2-lane kind of main road that had a pedestrian light for us to cross. So quite safe. It was just kind of, and this road just kind of separated these 2 neighborhoods from each other. And so we would ride over to my aunt and uncle's house to go be with my cousins. And we were riding right by his house. And then when the story broke that he had been found and arrested, from my parents' house, you could hear and see the helicopters circling. And my mom grew up. My mom was a teenager and a young adult at the time that he was actively killing, and in the area where we live in Northern California. And one of the murders actually took place in the neighborhood where my mom's family lived. My mom wasn't living there at the time. She was already married to my dad, and they were living away either in Colorado or in Italy with the Air Force. But my aunt was there, and I can't remember if it might have even been like on their street. A girl or a young woman on their street was murdered. And so my aunt was quite traumatized by these killings. And so this is a deeper look at what he did and the search to find him. Next up, we have Mark Owen's No Easy Day, the autobiography of a Navy SEAL. And Mark Owen was part of SEAL Team 6, which was the Navy SEAL team that found Osama bin Laden. And so as a military wife, a Marine wife, I have particular interest in this. I had actually started this book and for some reason put it down. I was really enjoying what I was reading, so I would like to get back to this book too. Okay, next we have the Costa Book of the Year from 2018. And I believe this one won another, it might have been the Man Booker International Prize. I could be totally wrong on that, but this is The Cutout Girl, The Story of War and Family, Lost and Found by Bart Van Es. And this is basically, Bart Van Es is telling a story that of his family and their experience during the Holocaust. This next book is a book that I picked up at Walden Pond Bookshop in Oakland. If you're ever in the Bay Area, particularly in the East Bay, and you can get to Walden Pond Books, I highly recommend checking it out. Really great independent bookstore. This is The Accusation, Forbidden Stories from Inside North Korea by Bandi. And actually this, it goes sideways there. I have kind of this weird fascination with North Korea, how terrible it is. I saw a documentary that a British journalist was able to kind of sneak a camera in and had all this secret kind of footage. And I saw that probably in the early 2000s. And ever since, I've just been really fascinated by North Korea. I mean, in a way that you're fascinated by a train wreck, I suppose. So, and I love this cover. The writer is, of course, anonymous. Otherwise, he would be killed or be living out the rest of his days in some sort of work camp. This is a book that I picked up in a little free library quite a while ago. This is Zora Neale Hurston's Baracoon. So Zora Neale Hurston basically goes and interviews this man who had been brought over in the slave trade, and so he has not only memories of being a slave, but actually of the process of being brought from his homeland to be a slave. We have the pretty well-known Wild by Cheryl Strayed. I'm writing a memoir about my husband and I and our relationship in light of his traumatic brain injury, being hit by a roadside bomb in Iraq. And so I'm trying to get it to as many memoirs as I can, just to kind of see how other people have done it, looking at structure and prose and all that. So I saw the movie of Wild, and I would like to get to the book. Then we have Men We Reaped by Jesmyn Ward. This is her nonfiction book. I've read Salvage the Bones and absolutely loved it. And I have, what's the other one? I can't think of the name of the Jesmyn Ward book that I read last year. It was her most recent fiction release. I'm blanking on it, but I have Salvage the Bones, which is kind of part of, there's like 3 books that are related to each other. Not necessarily a trilogy, I think, but related. Anyhow, this is her nonfiction account. Then we have Henry Marsh's Do No Harm. And this is kind of a brain surgeon's account of life, death, and brain surgery. And we have Being Mortal by Atul Gawande, just kind of a look at our mortality and how it is that we kind of plan to spend the last chapter of our life and all. So I think this is going to be a difficult book, especially given what we've been going through with my husband, medically speaking, lately. So this might be a little bit too real for me at the moment. So that is a list of 20 books. So that is a list of 20 nonfiction books that I would really like to get to. Also, the books that were in my Nonfiction November TBR that I won't get to this month. Spoiler alert, I'm not going to get to all of them. I think I will probably have read 5 of the, I believe, 10 that I had in that TBR. So those books de facto belong in here as well. If there are any of these books that I mentioned that you have read that you think I should prioritize, or if there's a book here that you want to read, you have it, or you want to get it, and you want to read it with me, let me know in the comments. If we want to make a plan for, hey, let's read this together, and we can talk about it on the channel, in the comments, what have you, let me know.